Several advocacy groups in Rivers State continue to call on President Tinubu to reinstate Governor Siminalayi Fubara, who was suspended in March over his handling of the state's political crisis. One such group is the Ijaw Youth Council Worldwide. The group wants President Tinubu to demonstrate his commitment to democratic values by using the symbolic occasion of June 12 to restore Governor Fubara and all duly elected lawmakers in the state. President Tinubu declared a state of emergency in Rivers State on March the 18th after a prolonged political standoff between FCT Minister Nyesom Wike and Governor Fubara. The People's Democratic Party governors are currently challenging the president's actions in court. And for more on this story, Solomon Leno, former spokesperson for the Coalition of Rivers State Civil Society Organizations, joins me from Port Harcourt, in the Rivers State capital, as well as Dr. Abiye Hector Goma, a political analyst. He joins me from Leeds in the United Kingdom. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us tonight. I'll start with you, Solomon. What do you consider the significance of restoring Governor Fubara on June the 12th? We can hear you now.
On June 12th will be the reinstatement of all democratic structure, in Rivers State that was suspended on March 18th this year. And it's going to be very, very symbolic because, of course, leadership is a roller coaster of both popular and unpopular, actions and events. And of course, the one of March 18, 2025 came with a very rude shock and was an action that was not very popular, at the time, even though as time went by virtue of more revelations right now, Rivers people had come to realize, the wisdom behind the action of Mr. President on that fateful day. But be that as it may, we are practicing democracy, and of course, the leadership that we had here in Rivers State before the March 18 incident was one which was very dear to the hearts, of Rivers people, for which they still yearn that they have that government today. Of course, that action was not very popular at the time, like I said, but one of the things that will be very significant at this moment in our nationhood and in our democratic journey will be the reinstatement of the governor and the legislatures of Rivers State, because of course that will be very symbolic in a lot of ways, because the president that we have today is one man who fought, fearlessly and vehemently against the military dictatorship as at the time, and made a lot of sacrifices, to bring about the democracy that we have today. Of course, in his fatherly wisdom, he had taken the action which he took then. But right now, I think it is very clear, because, of course, all parties have learned a lot from the disagreement that existed here. And of course, it is the right time, to call back this the democratic institutions, because, of course, we are in a democracy, and that will be the only best thing that can be done at this time. And again, it will also create a very significant, a pass mark for the government and the administration of His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, because that will show that the action that he took that day was not, like many people perceived it, to please, the whims and caprices of any individual, or like people had, termed it, including myself, in the beginning stages of that event, as a state capture. So right now, I think calling back the governor would be the best thing and the best gift that can be given to Nigerians, not just Rivers people, on June 12th to mark that significant day.
Okay, just to recap what you've said, basically, the president should restore Governor Siminalayi Fubara for sentimental reasons. Let me bring in Dr. Goma. What difference will it make if the president restores Governor Fubara on June 12th instead of in September, when the 6 months initial suspension period will be complete?
Thank you very much. I think it's the fact that the suspension of Governor Siminalayi Fubara is an aberration of democracy. and bringing him back, whether it's June 12, June 11, is the right thing to do, and the sooner the better.
Great. I think I like how straightforward your answer is. Basically, they should bring him back because it is the right thing to do. But now it doesn't seem as if that the president is willing to do it, or are there any indications that the president will be doing that on June 12th?
Well, I mean, I don't know if we'll do it on June 12th. It will be symbolic, and I think we've been told, we've seen the governor meeting with the president. President Tinubu is like the father of the nation, and I think the most important thing for any leader to do is to do the right thing. And everybody knows that the removal of the governor is a political dispensation. And as somebody once said, if you want to know the truth, follow the money. And I think that's my personal view, and I'm sure it's the view of many people, that all of what is happening in Rivers State is particularly aimed at controlling the money, which is supposed to be used to develop Rivers State and improve the well-being of the people of Rivers State, and not to capture the state for the benefit of one political party. Well,
wouldn't that seem as though the president is unresolved in his decision to suspend them for 6 months if he walks it back now? Plus, PDP governors have already taken him to court. What difference would that make?
I mean, if I'll say, like I mentioned earlier, that a good leader does the right thing. And as the president of the country, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, if he decides today that I want Governor Siminalayi to return to power in Rivers State to do the work for which he was elected by the people of Rivers State, I'm sure there'll be jubilation all over the country and beyond. And at least, I mean, where I live in Leeds, the last Lord Mayor is a Nigerian. So people look up to Nigeria and Nigerians, and I think it would be a fantastic thing for the governor, for the president to do, to bring the governor back into the brick house as soon as possible, if not sooner.
Let me bring in Solomon. One of the reasons why the president suspended both the governor and the lawmakers is because they could not come to a resolution to put personal politics and interests aside and lead the people of Rivers State. Would you say that has been laid to rest now, that there is peace, and if the governor comes back, everything will all be rosy and well?
Well, I think like a lot of persons have said, I also believe that our issue, there wasn't any reason, cogent enough to have suspended them. But of course, like I said before, the obscurantism of leadership sometimes may not allow people who are on the outside to actually, get the complete reason for certain actions that governments, will take. But as it stands today, of course, it has been clear because the FCT Minister has said it time and time again that the plan, there was actually a plan to remove the governor from office, and the assembly members were, determined to do that. And of course, the president, waded in, even though with, a procedure that was not very popular. So right now, it doesn't matter whether it is tonight or tomorrow. What is very important right now for all Nigerians is to see that this democracy that was hard fought for, is not, thrown, into the trenches and by actions, of the actors in such a way that will begin to tell the military guys that they still have, an opportunity to come back. So I think it is very, very important because there was no reason. What happened in Rivers State here was just a political disagreement between one political party. Of course, we had other political parties who voted, in the governor. It wasn't just the PDP affair that brought him, as governor. So the issue within PDP was not enough to have, been a reason to remove him from office. So let's just leave all of that. I think we've gone past all that right now. Lessons have been learned. Even the president himself must have sat back to look at some of the actions, that he took and come to the realization that it was not very popular. So right now, I think in democracy, it is important to listen to the people. And what are the people saying? What are Nigerians saying? What are Rivers people saying? Including even those who were the warring factions, in that crisis. I can tell you without, contradiction right now that they are even tired and fed up of the voting. Some of them have even, realized that it wasn't a very good action that they had taken when the governor went to try to present the budget and they called his bluff, which was part of the reasons that the president stated to have declare a state of emergency here, that there was no governance and all of that. So I think right now it is important for us to do the right thing, even if we are veered off a bit, from the right track. It's not too late. It's never too late, for us to come back to the right track and do the right thing. And I expect that the president must have listened to voices of wisdom, or should listen to voices of wisdom, and do the right thing by calling back, the governor of Rivers State, so that Rivers State can return back, to the path of progress.
Dr. Abiye, before, Dr. Gomo, I beg your pardon, before I let you both go, your final word: if the president does not restore the lawmakers and Fubara on June 12th, does that mean that something has gone wrong fully with our democracy?
Knowledge, public conversation that the separation of powers between the executive, legislative, and judicial arms of government has become the clarity of a blur in Nigeria today. And I think, like I said again, is to do the right thing. The 1999 Constitution is very clear about what to do. I mean, Section 305 doesn't give the president the power to suspend our governor. And secondly, I think Section 11, Section 4 talks about if a state assembly is dysfunctional, then the National Assembly legislates and does not remove the governor. And I think that's the best case scenario, because there's also been conversation that if elected assembly members are defected to another party, the law is very clear on that. So if you say the remaining lawmakers are not enough to give the legislative arm of government, then the National Assembly can legislate, but the governor has to be reinstated along with his deputy. That is the right thing to do, and I think a good leader should do the right thing for the benefit of the people of Rivers State. So
you're saying at the very least, the president should reinstate the governor and his deputy, and then they can figure out the rest later?
Definitely. The law, there's provision in the law. If the state assembly is dysfunctional, then the National Assembly can work with the governor to rule the state until such a time when new legislative assembly members are elected.
Solomon, as a representative, a former spokesperson of the Coalition of River State Civil Society Organizations, if nothing happens the way you want it on June 12th, what's going to happen next? If the president does not restore Governor Siminalayi Fubara on the 12th, what are you guys going to do next?
On the advocacy, of course, we've been advocating because, of course, that's just what the civil society does. We don't go, up in arms against the system. We use advocacy to press home our demand, which is what we have been doing too. But I have a strong belief that, of course, the president will do the right thing, because, of course, this issue of Rivers State has become a litmus test, for our democracy, and the person of the president would not want, the democracy that we currently have today to have, a telling dent during his own administration, no matter what the case may be. So I believe that June 12th is going to be a historic day, or even though, because what we are saying now are just assumptions. Even though that doesn't happen, I believe that some way, somehow, the president will find a way to still, recuse himself of some of these things that have gone wrong.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to have to leave the conversation here for now. Thank you so much, Solomon Lenu, former spokesperson for the Coalition of River State Civil Society Organizations. Thank you for joining us tonight. Also, Dr. Abiye Hector Goma, a political analyst. Thank you both.